Alright, today we're going to go on a little journey. It's called tethering a camera. Okay, and with this lesson it's got a lot of goodies in it. It's got the fact that you get to see what an ISO is and how it works. You get to see what an aperture does. It's got a lens cleaning in it. It's got all kinds of craziness in this video, all rolled up into one. So it's a really good demonstration of product photography or portfolio, taking pictures of your portfolio pieces. I've included the worst case scenario, this very shiny thing that I had laying around, and I set the work area up to be very minimalistic for a reason, just to kind of show you that you don't need too much for photography, because you can always correct it at software. So if you don't want to spend a whole lot of money on a rig, you can just mainly fix a lot of it software wise. Cool. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and let's begin. Alright, locate this on the camera. This is a port that is a variant of USB, and the USB kind of looks like this. Let's see if I can get it to zoom in on that. There we go. Getting there. There we go. You can see those little prongs, and there's a space between. I'm looking at the plastic right there. So find that USB cord and then plug it into the camera. This is a Nikon 7100, just like that. You'll be switching it over to manual mode. S, and how you change these is you press this down and you can rotate it just like that. So I'm rotating it to S, putting it in M on this side of the camera. On this side of the camera, just make sure it's on. On this side of the camera, make sure VR is on, A is on, and AF is on. Make sure it's on camera. I've set up a very simple box with a very simple white background. It kind of mimics what we have in the lab, but yeah, there's no real fancy lighting or anything else. In fact, it's just a piece of white paper and a tub. One of those weird plastic tubs you buy at like Walmart. Those. Alright, and here what I want to do is just turn LV on. And it says cannot use live view at the current settings under the current conditions. Now, if you have the cable plugged in, that's happening. So, a lot of times what I'll do is just wait a couple seconds before I plug that cable in. Only because I can actually look through the viewport. I use this, not this, but just for this video. You can see how the lines are really crooked. See them? So I have to adjust the camera just a little bit, and I do that by loosening this little bracket just enough. So I gotta make sure that the shot is straight. That's what these are. And these lines are located under the info button. So these lines are working really good in my behalf for lining up the shot. And I just grabbed an object, to be honest with you. This object represents anything that you have to take a picture of for a portfolio. I just grabbed something interesting. Okay. So by lightly clicking this button here, it will focus on the area and give me a readout. To see the readout, just click the info button some more, and you get this. And this is telling me that it's going to be underexposed. You see that negative, it's in the negative range. So what I want to do is rotate this back to 0. Alright, now that's supposedly perfectly exposed, but really, in all actuality, I like to go just a little bit above that, like right about there. Experiment in this area is what I'm trying to tell you. You can also see that the quality of the shot is going to be normal. We do not want that, so I'll click quality, get out of live view, I'll click quality, and as I'm clicking quality, I don't know how I'm going to do this with one hand, but as I'm clicking it, I can rotate this dial, and I want it to be on fine. Alright, let's go back to LV, and now it says fine up at the top. Alright, now I can plug the cable in, and I'm going to be going into Lightroom and showing you how to use Lightroom to take this shot, because in Lightroom you can see all the flaws or things that you need to change, or you can add filters to it. So let's go there. Alright, now to take a picture with Lightroom hooked up to the camera, we go to File, Tethered Capture, Start Tethered Capture. For this, I'm just going to hit OK. If everything's hooked correctly, you should have the camera. It should have like the ISO and everything else listed. And by clicking this button, I can take a picture. Now I'll be able to zoom in a picture and kind of show you a few things about, like, things that you might not have known about a camera, because here I can like really explain and show, and yeah, like this noise, for example. See that? The little breaking up of the picture itself. You see that number ISO? Well, because my ISO is absolutely cranked to 2200, I'm going to experience things like this, for example. And I can really see that in Lightroom because I can zoom in and out. Where on the camera, it's a little harder to see that because the little view screen doesn't allow you to do that. You can zoom in and out, but it's not going to show it this bad. So let me show you how to correct this from happening now that we have it in Lightroom. On the camera we have an ISO button. So what I can do is click that and then come up here and rotate this dial at the same time. I'm going to rotate to ISO 100. This is the lowest ISO I can go to. Now, the thing is, I'm going to unplug the cable just to show you what that did. Now you can see I am in the negative here. So I'm going to have to roll this back by going to the left until it goes back to where it was. So by turning down the ISO, we actually made it go into the negative, but we compensated by opening the shutter up. for a longer period of time. That's why it's essential that you have it on some kind of tripod. I'm going to plug that back in and go back to Lightroom. So now that I've changed the ISO on my camera, you can see the ISO in Lightroom changed. It changes real time. When I change that back there, it'll change in here. Unfortunately, there's no way to change it in here to change it on the camera, because that would be cool. So let's take another shot. And let's look at the difference now. Okay, let's explore this area right in here. And I'll go back and forth between picks. You can see the grain here in this area. And then now I can see little hairs on the area. So huge difference. But what about focus? Like, I could see this thing's face is all blurred out and this is actually sharp. Wouldn't it be better if the skull was sharpened and then the wings were blurred out? Or how about, because it's like maybe a portfolio piece, what about everything? So that's where the f-stop comes in. Okay? This will give you the ability to keep everything in focus. The higher this number, the more depth of field you have. So I'm going to now crank this number and show you the difference between that. We got rid of the ugly noise. That's important. But now we got to get rid of the shallow depth of field that occurs here. Alright, to adjust the f-stop, one can simply go and there's a knob right here. Okay, it's a rotating knob. So I can rotate that and you can see that it's cranking up the ISO, or not, the f-stop. So now it's 36. That's the best you can do. Now, let's unplug this wire. Show you one more thing here. Let's go into live view. And you see that red box? I can actually move it around using this joystick. So where that red box is where it's actually focusing in on. And I'm going to point it towards its chest. And plug back in the camera. Let's go back to Lightroom with those changes. Alright, now that I have that change, I've changed the f-stop to be much higher. Let's take another shot. Whoa, it got darker. And look at all this weird stuff that occurred. Okay, so if I raise this number, just like before, I have to lower this number. So everything is in a balance with each other. And that's what that meter is for back in your camera, is to see that balance. So you can play around with an infinite amount of settings. As long as you know that meter, you can play all day long. Just get it back to 0. So for example, if I go back to LV, you can see my meter's in the negative again. And I'm rotating this again to compensate for it. Then I'll plug in the camera, show you that shot in Lightroom. Alright, so let's take that shot. You can see the f-stop's 36. you can hear the shutter open, and it takes a long time to close. At this point, you definitely have to have a tripod in order to support that much time. And let's look around on this piece. Like, really, there's a lot of things sharp. I've stressed out that lens enough that this is the maximum amount of sharpness that it can occur with that lens. Okay? So that lens was never really made for this much to happen. Also, you can see inside the lens it's dirty. Very dirty. I was going to clean it, but then I thought, well, this will give you the opportunity to see that too. And you can see all kinds of detail. Alright, now, what I'm going to show you is if I go to develop, I can go down here and then I can up sharpening. And now let's look at the detail. Let's toggle that off and on. You can still see noise too, but this is, again, this is the highest I can go with this lens, and the noise is still there. So at that point, you can do some noise reduction here in Lightroom. Cool. Alright, I'm going to clean the lens off now, and yeah, give you the opportunity to see what that looks like, because another thing that happens when you have a dirty lens is it could be actually focusing in on these little bits before it even hits the piece. So let's say there was a dust particle here somewhere, and I just can't see it because there's this guy in the way. It's going to actually focus in on the dust particle before it actually focuses on this piece of art. So yeah, let's look at that. I'll clean the lens off and take another shot. If you end up cleaning a lens, make sure that you put down a piece of paper, a clean piece of paper. Make sure that you have a soft cloth. Okay? And there's some optical illusions that happen with dirty lenses that are pretty cool to see. There's dirt on the surface of this lens, but it looks like the dirt's on the inside of the lens. But that's an optical illusion that happens. So let's say there was a piece of dirt. It actually shows on the back side of the lens because it's kind of a mirroring effect. So just be wary that you do not need to ever take apart a lens to clean it. It's just a simple wipe with a soft cloth. And I'm going to do that with two hands because it's more efficient. But piece of paper, soft cloth. Okay, one that you use on eyeglasses. We have them all over the lab. Just ask. And you have to clean the little one in the back too. Here's a lens that needs to be professionally cleaned. Just showing you that. So when I rotate this, you can see this haze that appears. Okay, see it right there, those little bubbles. That indicates that your lens has to be professionally cleaned because the dirt is in the inside of the lens. Alright, with the lens clean, I can now take another shot. Make sure the camera's all hooked up. I'm just taking a shot normally with the button on the camera just so it recycles back into Lightroom. Oftentimes if you shock the system too much, you might have to close this window out. Like I didn't see a new shot appear, so that means I have to go back to start tether capture. There we go. Cool. So I've shown you why these occur. This lens definitely does need to be clean. It's nothing that we can get around. So those are things that we'd have to take care of in Photoshop. These little dust particles. And this that it's occurring can be corrected at camera level as far as the ability to get all the way through as far as the depth of field is concerned. So we have it on f32, ISO 100, white balance of auto, but we need it to focus all the way through. At least then we can correct some of this stuff. Looks good, you know, from far away, but if you were selling this as a product, you definitely do not want that to occur. Because nowadays, especially if you go to sell online, if you go to put a product online, the client can zoom in and out of the actual product. So the reason the camera is only focusing on one little tiny area is because of that dot right there. See the little dot? So that is the focus, the autofocus that's occurring. So this little button right here, along with this dial, changes that. So now, like this one would be the laser. This one would be kind of considered just a normal, everyday gun. This would be the shotgun approach to it. So this one gathers more points in the area of focus. Where this one you have to be really direct, and you can't get that direct sometimes on the camera, especially with shiny stuff. That's why I chose this as an object, because it's really shiny. It's really hard to take a picture of shiny things. So I'm going to choose this one instead. Alright, let's go back to Lightroom again. Alright, with the new change in place, let's take a shot. So you can see that, yeah, I mean, like overall, pretty good, but you can still see this blur. So I'm going to try that other bracketing. There was 3 of them. There was a point, there was the broad one, and there was one in the middle there. So I'm going to actually switch that back over to the other one. And then try to take another shot. And then I'm going to compare the two. Here's the laser one. Here is the very big, and this is the middle one. And just for simplistic reasons, I'm going to move this one over. That way I have them in consecutive order from smallest to biggest. Alright, so if those 3 bracketings are not allowing you to get the crispness that you want, we have to go and do it manually. Again, I chose this as a object because it's very hard to photograph shiny stuff. Trust me. I thought it'd be a great learning opportunity for you. Is it always going to be this hard? No, but this shiny thing definitely is challenging. So let me show you another way we can correct this. So I'm going to switch over to live view. Then I'm going to zoom in. Zoom in button right there. And this is the zoom out button. And then I can kind of pan around using that. Now, there's a ring right here. See it? I'm going to switch over to A for auto. Awesome, right? So if autofocus is not on, it's going to get close. I was playing with VR for a second there, and it probably got bumped off. Wow, what a difference. So obviously I've stressed out that lens enough. I can tell that there's a difference because I can see these shine points on everything. Let me pan back and forth between the two. And now the only thing I have left to do is sharpen it in Lightroom. Everything is as best as it can be with that lens. I can see the straight line here, and that line is very prominent. The outside edges. The outside edges can tell you if you have everything good. Cool. So a little noise reduction. And here is what that looked like before and after. It's very slight, but it's very powerful. Now that if the lens was actually clean, I wouldn't have to go to a next step, but I do have to do that in Photoshop. Alright, to take this into Photoshop, I hit Command E. And if you're on a PC, it's Control E. Edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Now, before I do that, that means I should make all the adjustments. For example, here is my dropper. This is my white balance. And this background was white for a reason. I'm going to click on this. And it's light, but now it's white balanced, correlating to white. I don't want to change too much of this because it's false advertising, but I'm just going to up clarity and up vibrance just a little bit because it is a shiny piece. A little bit noise reduction, and then I'm going to do a lens correction on it using Nikon. And wow, right? Here's the difference between those. Cool. So those are the major ones you take care of all the time. If you had a bunch of these pictures, you could just copy that and then you could paste it onto another one. Alright, now that I'm done making all the changes, I do see that this needs to be straightened out a little bit. So go to the crop, maybe rotate it one skosh this way. That does clip off the wing, so right about there without clipping off the wing. Now we can bring it into Photoshop using Command E. I could fix those speckles in Lightroom, but it's inefficient in my humble opinion. So I'm gonna wait till this loads. Alright, so here in Photoshop, what I want to really do is clean up some of this dust particle stuff. And to do that, I can either use the patch tool, and what I do is I grab a dot and drag it over here, and you can see that it's just dragging dots over to a good area. So again, circle, drag. Okay, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is use the clone stamp tool. Using the bracket keys on your keyboard, you can make the brush bigger. Holding Alt, I can sample a good area, and then click, let go of Alt, and paint. Now that's really good for, like, let's say the thing was very close to it. I use Alt and the wheel mouse to zoom in. Hold Alt, click on a good area, paint the bad area. Alt, click the good area, paint the bad area. So if I'm really getting nitpicky about things, I can get in here and paint those out. Nice. I find the patch tool works for really big stuff as long as you have an area that's good to drag them to. Now obviously you wouldn't want to do this per shot because it would take a long time. So the most efficient way here is to get your lens cleaned. And because this is shot with a white background, and you want to do that because it's about the product, it isn't about the background. A lot of times I see people taking pictures of things with a very amazing background, but the product is completely taken out of the equation because of that. Alright, there we go. That's how I'm cleaning this up. And now it's ready to actually be a sellable product. Correlating to whatever you crop it at. Like I feel that there's a lot of extra space here. I do like this where it's balanced over on the left, but I'm going to crop that. Now it feels more about the product again. Cool. So I hope you enjoyed a product photography lesson using Lightroom, using Photoshop, and showing those things that you can change on your camera to improve the overall look. Enjoy.